Hey bookworms, it's Jade from Bedtime Bookworm and welcome back to my channel. Today I'm here to talk about my top 5 books that I read in the spring. I'm definitely making this video a lot later than I usually do. I should have posted it in June, but if you haven't noticed, I haven't really been keeping up with my channel like I typically do. But these are some of my favorite videos to make. All of my seasonal videos. I love making my seasonal videos, so I didn't want to skip it, and hopefully some of you guys are still interested in hearing what my favorite books from the spring were. In case this is my first seasonal wrap-up that you've seen, I'll quickly give you an idea of how this works. So in my monthly wrap-ups, I always talk about the books that I read in the order that I read them, but for my seasonal wrap-ups, I actually talk about the books in the order of enjoyment. I actually rank all of them against each other, so you can kind of see, out of all of my many 4-star books, which ones I enjoyed more than others. So I'll start with my lowest rated books and work my way up to my top 5, and for those top 5 I go into more depth about why I enjoyed them so much. I will have the monthly wrap-ups linked down below, and in this case we're talking about the months of March, April, and May. So you can check out those videos if you want more thoughts, especially for those books that didn't make it to my top 5, if you're interested in hearing more thoughts on those. So I had a pretty good reading season in the spring. I picked up a total of 17 books, and honestly that number is a little bit inflated because 3 of them were novellas. I'd say those 3 novellas put together kind of equal the size of a normal book, but that's still a pretty good number of books for me. And out of those 17, I did have one book that I DNF'd. So this is how my ratings panned out. As you can see, I had a ton of 4-star reads, which is good. I always want to have mostly 4-star reads. I want to enjoy most of what I'm reading. So I did have 2 2-star books, one of those being one that I DNF'd. I had 2 3-star books. I had 9 4-star books, and some of these are definitely like 3.5 so that I rounded up to 4. And I had 4 5-star books. None of the books that I read in the spring were rereads. All right, let's get started, starting at the very bottom of the list with my 2-star reads. The one that I liked the very least out of all of the books that I read in the spring was This Is How You Lose the Time War by Amal El-Notar and Max Gladstone, followed closely by Saving Fish from Drowning by Amy Tan, which is the book that I DNF'd. Out of my 2 3-star books, the one that I liked the least was Agnes at the End of the World by Kelly McWilliams, which I did read as an advanced reader copy that I got from NetGalley in exchange for an honest review. My other 3-star read was The Gilded Wolves by Roshni Chotsky. And then my 4-star books. So like I said, I had 9 of them, which is quite a lot. So it was a little hard to rank these. And then of course, out of these 9 4-star books, I had to pick one to put into my top 5 because I had 4 5-star books. And that was not an easy choice because especially towards the top of the 4s, they were pretty close. At the bottom of my 4 stars, I have Gideon the Ninth by Tamsin Muir, followed by House of Dragons by Jessica Cluess, which was an advanced reader copy that I received from the publisher when I went to a book festival earlier this year. Next, I have Ruthless Gods by Emily A. Duncan. This was also an advanced reader copy that I received when I went to BookNet Fest last year. Followed by To Be Taught If Fortunate by Becky Chambers, which is a novella. And then I have The Book of Coley by M.R. Carey, which was also an advanced reader copy that I got off of NetGalley in exchange for an honest review. Next, I have The Test by Sylvain Nouvel, which is also a novella, followed by The Cruel Prince by Holly Black, and then Starsight by Brandon Sanderson. And that brings me to my top 5 books. So the bottom of my top 5 is a 4-star book, and that was The Wicked King by Holly Black, which is the second book in the Folk of the Air series. I did enjoy this second book slightly more than the first book in the series, The Cruel Prince. I really enjoy the characters in this book, especially Jude, which I find surprising because she's kind of one of those like rash characters who does things without totally thinking them through, which is definitely not the type of main character I tend to gravitate towards, but she really grew on me through the course of these 2 books, and I think she's really smart, and I just had a lot of fun reading from her perspective. The second installment in the series also had a lot more politics going on and a lot more action, and I really enjoyed it and had so much fun reading it. I did primarily listened to this. I actually listened to both of them because the narrator is really good and I really enjoyed these books on audio, so I definitely recommend the audiobooks if you can get your hands on them. I really wasn't sure going into the series what I would think because I know that it's sort of like an enemies to lovers trope, and that often doesn't work for me, but in this case, it is working for me. I don't know why. I can't pinpoint why, but I am enjoying the romance in this series. I was a little surprised by the way the second book ended. It was not what I was expecting, so I am very excited to read the third and final book. I'm hoping to read it soonish, like in the next few months, while everything is still pretty fresh on my mind, and I'm really looking forward to it. Okay, that brings me to my 5-star reads for the spring. At the bottom of my 5 stars, I have Skyward by Brandon Sanderson. So I did like the first book in the series better than the second installment. There was just so much to love about this book. There were a few things that I didn't love, so this was definitely more of like a 4.5 that I rounded up to 5, which is why it's at the bottom of my 5 stars. A couple things that I didn't love included Spensa, at least at the beginning. She's the main character, and I found her a little annoying, but she has definitely grown on me through the course of the books, and I think she has grown a lot as a character and will continue to grow a lot in the next books. I also kind of struggled with this first book kind of feeling a little middle grade, but also YA. It felt like a mix between the two just because Spensa in the beginning is so naive. I think it would make a really good crossover series for younger readers who are trying to get into YA, because there are definitely YA themes, but I don't really know how to explain it. It still kind of felt a little bit middle grade, like older middle grade. But there's also so many other things that I loved about this book. I thought the world was super interesting. I mean, Sanderson is a master at world building. I really like the found family in this book with the, group of kids that have to learn to work together and become friends. Also, there is an AI character in this book who was hilarious, and I loved him so much. He was definitely my favorite part of the book. And then the ending was so good. I mean, I was definitely enjoying it before I got to the 75% mark, but the last quarter of the book, like many of Sanderson's books, just had so many things happening, so much action and plot twists, and it was just a total blast. And I ended the book with just such a huge grin on my face and excited about continuing on in the series. I definitely really enjoyed this one. I did enjoy the second one as well, just not quite as much, but I'm still very much looking forward to continuing on in the rest of the series. My next favorite book out of the books that I read in the spring was Home Before Dark by Riley Sager. This is an adult book. It's an adult thriller with some like horror elements. It is the second Riley Sager book that I have read, and I thoroughly enjoyed it. Obviously, I gave it 5 stars. So this one is kind of inspired by the Amityville horror story. The main character, when she was a child, moved to this old dilapidated house with her parents, and after 2 weeks they abruptly moved out, and it became this like sensational story about them moving out because the house was haunted. Her dad actually was an author and wrote a book about their experience in the house, and that became like a bestseller. So the story has 2 timelines, one present day where basically the main character goes back to this house to renovate it and sell it, but the other timeline is set in the past, and it is actually chapters from the book that her dad wrote, and they alternate. And the chapters from the book that her dad wrote were my favorite because they read like a haunted house story. And I thought Riley Sager did a really great job of kind of differentiating the writing style. It didn't feel like the same author was writing both of these things. It definitely felt different when I was reading the book that her dad wrote. And I thought that those haunted house parts were pretty creepy, which of course filled my horror-loving heart. I really liked the way the story wrapped up. There were definitely some surprises for me. The pacing was great. Really had a good time while reading the book from beginning to end. I did do this as a buddy read with my friend Rachel from the Shades of Orange, and she also really enjoyed it. And it was a lot of fun to read this one together because we kept, discussing theories that we had and like second guessing ourselves, and it was definitely a really fun book to buddy read. That brings me to my second to top favorite book from the spring, and that was Scythe by Neal Shusterman. This is the first book in the Arc of the Scythe series, and it's one that I've had my eye on for quite a while. So many people have really enjoyed this trilogy, and now that it was completed, I knew that I wanted to read it. I did also do this one as a buddy read with Angela from Literature Science Alliance, who I'll link linked down below. What I loved about Scythe was the way that Neal Shusterman explores these ideas about like what a utopian society where there is no death and illness would look like. But he also touches on so many other things, like ideas about morality. There's a little bit about like mass murders and suicide and AIs and how much power you give to an AI, and just all kinds of really cool ideas explored in what I thought was a unique world. I also really enjoyed all of the characters in the book. The last quarter, again, was really good with lots of twists and turns and surprises for me. And I just overall had such a good time reading it. I was thoroughly entertained every time I picked it up, and when I wasn't reading it, I was wanting to read it. I did listen to this mostly on audio. Again, these are really good audiobooks, so I definitely recommend these on audio. I'm really excited about continuing on in this series. I'm hoping / planning to get to the next one very soon. And I hear that Neal Shusterman continues to explore these ideas in really interesting ways throughout the rest of the series. All right, that brings me to my favorite book that I read in the spring, and this one will probably come as a surprise to you guys. It definitely was very much a surprise to me, but when I went to go make this list, this book definitely stood out as being one that I enjoyed so much. And it's not even just that I enjoyed it, it's that it had a lot of meaning for me and was really thought-provoking. And that is Maybe You Should Talk to Someone by Lori Gottlieb. This is a memoir, which, you know, isn't in my typical wheelhouse, but I do occasionally pick up memoirs. And this memoir is about Lori Gottlieb, obviously. She is a therapist, and so there's a bunch of stories in here related to her patients and the therapy that she was providing, but it also takes place during a time where she was going through a hard time and was seeing her own therapist, and so she goes into that relationship as well. I just think Lori Gottlieb is super interesting, and her insights as a therapist into the world and how the people that she was providing therapy for, how they think, was super interesting and enlightening. There are definitely some hard topics that are covered in this book, so look up some trigger warnings if you're sensitive to some things. But I just really enjoyed this book, and I learned a lot from it. I think this is a book that I feel like everybody should read, but I think people who have been to therapy before and find that interesting would really enjoy this book. But I also think that people who haven't been to therapy before could enjoy this, because I think it could help to like demystify what therapy is like and to, you know, show how it can be helpful and make it less of a stigma. There were just so many nuggets of wisdom in this book, so many quotes that I wanted to save. I did have it out from the library, so I didn't get to save any of them, but if you go to the Goodreads page for this book and go to the quotes that other people have saved, a lot of the ones that I wanted to save are on that page. So I have actually a couple different times gone and looked at those quotes and just like read through them, because some of them were super meaningful and poignant. And I love this book so much, and I can't believe that a nonfiction book was my favorite book of the spring. Alright guys, those are my top 5 favorite books that I read in the spring. Let me know down in the comment section what you thought of any of these books if you've read them. Let me know what maybe your favorite book that you read in the spring was. If you like this video, be sure to give it a thumbs up and subscribe to my channel for more bookish content. That is all I have for now. Thank you so much for watching, and until next time, bookworms, keep reading. Bye.